So the homework this week I've not done, but I thought I'd cheat and try and slow down on the previous one, which was about Jesus. So hopefully it will work out. So you want to hear about the story of Jesus? Well, that's easy because I learned that in religious studies at school. And you really couldn't believe it happened. It's that far-fetched, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Now, Jesus was born on Christmas Day, which sucks because having your birthday on that day is rubbish. My mate Jeff at school was the same. His mum never got him enough presents. Anyway, it turns out Jesus' mum Mary had a one-night stand on her hen night with a scumbag called God, who got her pregnant, and she still denies this. Now, Mary's husband Joseph was not the sharpest tool and believed babies were brought to you by storks. So Mary thought she got away with that one. Well, so she thought. So they all went on Jerry Springer to sort out their differences. That was the norm back in them days. But Mary refused to take the lie detector. God didn't show up, which was typical. And Jesus had a fight with security guards. Jesus ended up getting picked on at school as well. The obvious reason was for going on Jerry Springer, but also because he didn't look like his dad. Not his real dad, his pretend dad, Joseph. So Jesus started telling lies to everyone. Massive lies. He said his dad, not his real dad, the pretend dad Joseph, was a secret spy. Being a carpenter was his cover story. He said he'd lost his virginity to the hot school teacher when he was 14. He said he'd won the lottery on his first go. He said he'd punched the punch bag so hard that the punch bag fell off. Yep. He said he'd even seen the new Star Wars film. It hadn't even been made yet. He said his dad, not his real dad, his pretend dad Joseph's, in his spare time, from being a spy and a carpenter, he played for Bethlehem FC. So the lies continued, and everyone was getting fed up with him. Even his real dad, God, not the pretend dad Joseph. Now, God was getting ribbed by his mates down the pub all the time, and he'd had enough. So God decided to pay his son Jesus a lesson by nailing him to a cross for his sins, which I think's a bit extreme. I reckon all he had to do was put him on the naughty step, which worked for me with my mum, and I think that would have worked out for Jesus as well. But, you know, I'm not going to comment on his parenting skills. Even worse, it was the hottest day of the year. Now, I blame climate change. Now, after what seemed like a lifetime, the sunburn was horrific. A miracle happened. Yep, a miracle happened in the story of Jesus. Some thought he'd died because he'd gone missing. Some thought he'd fell off the wagon. Turns out he got lost on an Easter egg hunt. Now, typical Jesus, he came back and said he'd found 100 eggs. 100 eggs, yep. And he even said he'd found a goose that laid golden eggs. But everyone just rolled their eyes and called bullshit. But Jesus was now going for his pretentious stage. He was calling himself the Son of God. Now, I felt sorry for Joseph. Not his real dad, the pretend dad. Anyway, turns out God really was a scumbag. He was now selling his sperm to people that couldn't have children, and it became such big business that he opened a shop and called it the Children of God. What a tosser. Now, finally, his dad, his real dad God, not his pretend dad Joseph, took him to one side and said, son, look, you've got to stop telling lies to everyone you meet. Why don't you do something with your life? Why don't you do something with these stories? Why don't you write a book or something? So Jesus said, for God's sake. See, Jesus still wasn't calling God his dad, which really annoyed him. He said, right, fine, I'll write a book. I'm going to write a book for lonely people in hotels, and I'm going to call it the Bible. This was a massive seller, massive, top of the fiction charts for ages. However, he still wasn't happy. He wished he'd written the Harry Potter books instead. The money he would have made. Thank you, and good night.